This is Keeping Skor: creativity, curiosity, and the things we keep. I think what I like best about recording these episodes is that I'm always surprised about the trajectory of the conversations. I kind of know where they're going to start and I'm pretty sure where they'll end up, but the path along the way is always a fantastic adventure. Stick around for this one. I think you'll feel the same way. When I sat down with Derek, I knew he had a collection of vintage motorcycles. I knew he worked on them, restored them, rode them, but early in the conversation, we're actually talking about much more than motorcycles. We get into his background, his memories as a young boy, his work as an artist, his relationship with technology, and the way he thinks about making things. So for a while, we're circling around the collection instead of talking about it directly. And then something really interesting happens. At a certain point, there's a realization that these things aren't separate at all. The way Derek works on motorcycles, the way he approaches art, the way he solves problems, they're all part of the same mindset. And once that clicks, the conversation really opens up. Because now, it's not just about motorcycles, it's about a philosophy of life. It's about systems, about understanding how things work, and about the difference between owning something and actually engaging with it. We talk about what you experience when you're riding, how your focus changes, how everything falls away, and that the experience becomes much more important than the object itself. So, this is a conversation about collecting, but it's also about life, about motion, about risk and freedom, and about what it means to learn through experience. This is Keeping Skor. Enjoy the conversation. All right, cool, dude. Well, let's we're gonna start over a little bit. So yeah, how's your day going?
It's going. Yeah. Not a bad day. It's the I don't mind the dreariness. Keeps me inside.
Yeah, do you do so it's Easter. It's Easter, the weekend of Easter. It's on Sunday morning. Any chocolate eggs or chocolate bunnies in your immediate future or recent past?
Nah, not I mean, well, maybe some Easter eggs with a little couple quarters hidden in them. Some family traditions of my mom still likes to hide Easter eggs.
Aw.
Yeah,
Does
yeah.
you think is that really a possibility when you go to your mom's today? There might be a
Oh yeah, definitely. It's a tradition for sure. And I think now that there's a great grandchild, it keeps the tradition going. I'm not too sure she would still do it if it was just me and my sister and niece, but now there's another young one. She'll hide a few eggs, stuff a couple dollars in each. Um, I remember as a kid, it used to be quarters. Now we can actually get some bills in there.
Dude, it's crazy. If I would have ever gotten $1 in an Easter egg when I was younger, I think I would have lost my mind.
Yeah, those are the special ones. So I feel like, and obviously my sister and I would, is a competition, see who could get the most money.
Yeah, one of the bummers for me is because I actually really same thing. I love Easter. I love Easter egg hunting, and yeah, my dad still does it. So if I'm up there, uh, we'll do it in the house, so it's not an outside thing. But each one of us gets a room. I'll get the living room. My sister will get the dining room. Brothers get get a different room, and yeah, he'll just hide eggs all the throughout the room, and they're almost always in like very very similar spots because it's a
Yeah.
room. How it's hard to pick sort of unique spots, but it's so much fun. It never gets old. Yeah,
So
hopefully I'll be doing that
you each get
until
your own room.
what's that?
You each get your own room of like Steven's Easter eggs are in this
Yeah,
room.
yeah, 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 yeah,
That way
yeah.
there's no like fighting over it.
Yes, exactly,
Oh,
exactly.
wow. Yeah, yeah. I think the fighting was sort of part of our experience. Like, no, no, this is free for all. Elbows are fair game too.
So even when you were younger, because your sister's older, is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. She's like 9 years older, so definitely had an advantage over me, I believe. But that's part of it.
Dang.
That's part of it.
All right. Did it make you tougher?
Darwinism, yeah, for sure.
Well, that's good actually, because I do want to get into young Derek a little bit. So actually, I mean, in all seriousness, I was thinking about this, and it's really interesting okay, so for those who are listening, you and I know each other.
Yeah.
Um, And I would say, it's weird because I've been working here 8 years. You've been here that whole time, but kind of working in the same, department. Has been last whatever, maybe 5 years or something.
Yeah.
Um, so on one hand, I'm like, oh yeah, I know Derek really well. But then on the other hand, I'm like, oh no, I know Derek really well as Derek now. Right. And
Yeah.
that's the interesting thing about when you meet someone when you're older is that, you know them from the moment you know them and you don't know them from, everything prior. So I was thinking about like, before I just get into like, yeah, tell me about where you've been, who you are. I'm just curious as a general thought. Do you think I would recognize young Derek as opposed to Derek of today?
Whew. That's a tough question. I would like to think so. I don't think I've, gone that far from the grounds, but yeah, I mean, I think a lot of my mannerisms have carried through the years. So I think that would probably be the dead giveaway. I mean, yeah, the way I still sort of now we call it collaboration, but in those days we called it play. Um, but
Right.
the way I would play with peers, I think it's very much the same way I collaborate and converse and sort of share, with peers and friends and colleagues now. So I think there's some things that would be recognizable. Probably a little less hair on my face, but so that might be weird for you. That'd
Right.
be the hard part.
Yeah, if I saw 8-year-old Derek with a full beard, that would be terrifying,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. I might
Uh,
be terrified with the 8-year-old, but yeah.
and I think that's really interesting, right? That because that's kind of the way I feel. Like, I feel like if people knew 8-year-old me, yeah, I mean, obviously some things have changed, but I'm not sure that I could point to um, kind of really big changes. And I might be completely wrong about that.
Mhm.
But I do always find that interesting to think about. So the way you work now, um, at work, with your friends, with your artistic collaborators, you think same kind of energy as 8-year-old Derek.
Yeah, I think a very similar vibe, similar energy. And yeah, I do. I mean, obviously there was the teenage Derek. That one might be harder to recognize. So, when you go through the more of the introduction to the punk years, the skateboard years, like, the kind of FTW kind of maybe that Derek was a little different. So that one might be harder. But 8-year old is still true to oneself, I feel like. Yeah, there's a lot of hormones that happen from, 12 to 18 or 12 to whatever. But yeah.
So 8-year-old Derek, sweet little kid, 16-year-old Derek, rotten bastard.
A little bit of a bastard. My mom would probably even agree with that one.
Well, along those lines, give me because these are things that I don't know. Give me the Derek timeline. Where have you been? What have you done? And just to kind of ground this, we're eventually going to get to talk about, your motorcycles and your motorcycle collection and, your relationship with motorcycles. But I think in order for us to understand what that is, we kind
Yeah.
of need to know where you came from because you have a pretty varied background in terms like professionally.
Yeah.
But even before that, again, take me back to your earliest memories and go from there.
Yeah, mean, maybe with a little bit of like knowing where the conversation may lead us. I'll give a little bit of context to some of that, but maybe not try to focus too much. But young Derek, and I won't get too personal either. I don't want to get too in the weeds with this, but I had a maybe a less than ordinary experience with childhood in that I lost my father like when I was 7 years old. So I would say that my relationship to my mother sort of, was much faster tracked than maybe normal. Like that was the parent. That was my kind of connection with adulthood, rather than having a father figure. And I, we've already mentioned a little bit my sister being 9 years older than me. So I think that I lived in a maybe a adult world sooner, in some ways. But in that, I think that a lot of my curiosity as a kid came from just sort of, being out in the world, out in nature, as with a lot of kids in our generation, so sort of exploring, imagination. So I had a strong imagination, was my friend growing up as probably in a childhood years. Since I didn't have a lot of and again, this is also in a more rural setting. So didn't have a lot of friends in the neighborhood kind of thing. There's a few, but a wide
Yeah,
range.
yeah, just not to interrupt, but so
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is North Carolina.
Yes, North Carolina, just and actually not as far from where we are now in Greensboro. So just about, 30 minutes south of here. So the Greensboro was the biggest city for us, the closest proximity city for us then.
Mm,
Again, rural neighborhood land, a little bit of farmland, kind of tobacco country, if you will. So Randolph County, and
okay.
yeah, yeah. So where I grew up, there's about 5 acres, but then it was surrounded by like some family members that have 20 acres and grandparents with 50 acres. So it's a lot of land in the area. It's changed now, as the whole world has. But yeah, yeah.
So that's interesting. Okay, so you're running around. You have a sister, but she's older.
Hmm.
Um, and
And
then, yeah, I mean, so did you spend a lot of, I mean, obviously you had school and, other activities, but, on days that, there wasn't something structured like that, was it a lot of, kind of alone playing time, or would your sister, would you and your sister play? Did you have cousins around that you could kind of, run around the creek with and, I
yeah,
don't know, do whatever you're going to do, throw stones at frogs or, whatever you're going
yeah.
to do.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that, collecting the tadpoles out the creek, throwing stone. I had a few cousins. One cousin was like 2 years younger. Another cousin was, again, probably 7 years older. So kind of a spectrum in that as well that were close by. But again, a lot of the time being spent outside. Um, I think again, maybe going back to the idea of the older sibling and older cousin as well, I was introduced to things maybe a lot earlier. So I remember, maybe probably being 9 years old, Eddie Murphy Raw, listening to Eddie Murphy Raw on vinyl even,
Nice.
my sisters. And then I remember like my cousin having a cassette tape of Run DMC. So, so those sort of experiences as well. I think, yeah. And I think that sort of entered into my world maybe earlier than some, but still, I think as a kid and growing up, I would definitely was interested in being outside and kind of hoping that I would get to camp like every weekend. That was my thing. That was sort of a reward for me is like to get to camp in our woods. Like, again, it was just a stone throw from the house, but just being able to be outside and be in that environment was a reward. And if I was bad or didn't get the A's in school, that was my punishment as well. I was like, oh, well, you don't get to camp this weekend. You got to stay inside and sleep inside.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
And I mean, would you typically camp by yourself or friends or how would that work?
I mean, originally it was like, by myself. I had a tent, like a small little tent. But then, I did get some friends. We had some friends that would do weekend overnight stays and that kind of thing. So that kind of developed maybe into when I was 10 years old, that kind of age range, which also is about the same time I, you know, get a quad, like a four-wheeler. That was my sort of first motorsport introduction. Was a motor, kind of the four-wheeler Honda four-wheelers, a 200 SX. I remember it. But again, that just let me get farther into the woods and spend more time into the woods and I think when that happened, also there's like a couple of neighborhood kids that had some motorcycles and another four-wheeler, and we would kind of trade bikes, trade four-wheelers, do camping things together, build trails. So then everything kind of revolved around that in the woods. It was like, oh, let's make some trails. Let's try to get up this hill, or let's cross this creek right here and these new challenges. And that was that's when I probably became more of the daredevil Derek, which, I still definitely have some traces of that, I feel.
Yeah, Daredevil Derek. Was that ever a nickname?
Nah, not quite. Although,
I think it might be. I think you might find a new nameplate on your office
yeah.
door.
My mom
Um,
probably says that. So maybe it's my nickname that she didn't tell me.
well, okay, so tell me a little bit, because I actually find that pretty well, it's interesting, but maybe it's a little foreshadowing. I don't know. You're 9 years old, thereabout, whenever these solo camping, trips started.
Yeah.
What did you like about that so much? Can you remember, why you wanted to forego the warm comfort of the house to get out into the woods? And even though it was close, maybe it's, whatever. Maybe you could even see your house from your first campsite. But what was the feeling? What was the driving motivator to get you out there by yourself?
I think it's maybe for me like where my imagination could grow in being in those environments where it wasn't so, structured around the things that I was familiar with. Like there was a sort of unfamiliar, and ever changing, whereas that sort of domesticated life is like, well, you're surrounded by your things, your distractions that become familiar and become part of your life. Whereas when there's another world, which being that world of nature and ever changing, like not being able to control the climate, temperature, and this. I think there was a lot of, maybe adventure in that and kind of possibilities of imagining new worlds. But I was also really attached to this idea of like, the people before me, like kind of like how they would use land, even as a kid, like how they would use the land and create tools and things like that was really fascinating. And not probably not really grounded in a lot of knowledge other than my own sort of interpretations of, but to me at that time was really fun.
Hmm. That's okay. What I find really interesting about that, I initially, thought that maybe you would talk about, how when you're in your living room and you rearrange all the furniture and the couch cushions and you throw a
Mhm.
bunch of blankets and you make a fort and you have a sense of safety.
Yeah.
There's this feeling of like this is my space, and obviously it's just pillows and blankets, but there's something in your little mind that it feels very safe. But
Mm.
what you talked about was something totally different. Yours, I think you were almost getting to the point of like, no, I kind of like going out there because maybe it's not safe, or I mean, there's a sense of adventure,
Yeah.
um, and that you get a chance to interact with the world around you in a different way.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely think it's about the adventure.
Huh.
It's even maybe about that kind of, easily your imagination could lead you into being scared as a kid too. Like that was part of it. I mean, being scared sort of excited me as a kid. I feel like, so having those moments of like, oh, well, I am running inside and I'm going to sleep inside now because I got scared of something and heard something in the woods or whatever. I mean, those moments. I mean, that was sort of. And those were part of it, I believe. So yeah, I don't know that it was like this necessarily kind of. I definitely created the forts and thought about that, and it's like, had these imaginations of building these bunkers into the ground, and that was part of it as well. But yeah, I don't know that it wasn't the safety aspect that led me to it, I don't think.
So, we're gonna shift in a second here to get to teenage Derek, but I actually think this is kind of an important question. Um, if someone had kids, would you recommend that they kind of let their kids, I don't know, kind of interact with the world the way you were? Like, can you look back and say, yeah, there were some real lessons that I learned, from, my mom just being like, yeah, go ahead, you know, go do what you're gonna do, and if you get scared, you figure it out, and you can always come back. But yeah, go out and sort of wander as far as you can. Like, is there something you look back on and you say, yeah, I can see that in me now, that I kind of grew that as a strength back then.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, I'd hate for somebody to not encourage that. I think it's probably a harder thing to encourage with sort of our relationships. I think our relationships to friends so different now. And this like, more globalization idea of it, like where a friend can be a phone call away, a text away, an Instagram post away, things like that. So we connect with friends in different ways. And I was even say maybe and I'm not going to argue better or worse, although I probably would say worse. But even the way we maybe connect our imaginations often seems digitized too at this point.
Mm.
Our world creating how they have to have some sort of, even though they're not physical form, they're just visual form that are more affirmed by maybe technology, things like that. Um, I don't know how one would convince. I mean, I'm not a parent. I can't really imagine being a parent, but yeah, that would maybe be the challenge. But I would hope that whatever that idea of like finding out for yourself meant. I hope that parents do sort of foster that for sure, because I think it's a big part of who I am. Um, and there's things for better or for worse. I think some of this childhood experience and reflecting on it now, I mean, might have led to me, being a person that sort of is comfortable being alone. And in some ways, I have to have people. Don't get me on that point, but just these, I'm not, yeah, I don't feel a sense of loneliness. I think even when I travel alone and things like that, being able to explore by myself is still exciting to me. But I see value in both. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that idea of, I mean, I can really relate to the idea of being comfortable alone.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's a great asset, but there are times when I even question it myself, like why, like I don't know, am I missing a gene, that
Yeah.
sort of prompts me to be around more people more of the time. Okay,
Yeah.
but that's great. I mean it's really good because I think when we get to kind of like, hear the rest of your kind of trajectory, just having that bit of a foundation really helps. So you move on, you become a teenager, the
Yeah.
punk
Yeah.
the punk scene, skateboarding. Yeah, tell us about how you evolved from camping on the weekends into what's the next thing?
Yeah, I guess, these things of camping on the weekend, riding the quads or four-wheelers, hanging out with this, finding a connection and a community in that. I mean, then it led into my, years of teenageism, being 13. I did have a big event when I was 13. It was going to be a camp, an overnight camp. It wasn't my house, it was at a friend's. It had a farm. Had several four-wheelers and motorcycles, and I was on a motorcycle, like a XR80, and we were riding in the woods. An XR80 is a trail bike, or more of an MX. So I didn't have a headlight, but there was a guy in a four-wheeler behind me, so I could see where I was going. But then I guess I don't know if things didn't compute to him, but he passes me or left me, and I can't see anything. So I'm just barely going down this dirt road at a farm. And then another guy on a motorcycle comes and we hit head on, like over a hill on a driveway.
Hmm.
Um, and I break my femur. So that was
Oh
my
my God.
that was my welcome to 13. Yeah, so broken femur, broken arm, concussion. Then I had to be in traction with the broken femur for a month in the hospital. So then I'm homeschooled then for this rest of the semester. So that was an experience. And again, this kind of Daredevil Derek, if you will, if we want to keep going with that. Just sort of gets more instilled, and that was sort of the life that I was living, it seemed like. But yeah, so that I think maybe changed some of my relationship to school and even an immediate connection to friends because I sort of lost out like a whole semester of having those people be in my life daily. Um, so I think, and I mention this because that's maybe when the kind of punk Derek starts to emerge, And again, we talked about that sort of hormones changing, but I think also having that time alone, but in a more forced way, I don't know those as healthy for me. But I did go in this kind of a darker punk stage at that point. And then when I did recover from this, actually, that's when I started skateboarding more than anything. You remember, this is a more of a rural town, and even the high school I was going to, or middle school, high school, is more of a rural town. So I think that a lot of those people I was hanging out with, or going through teenage years and getting more interested in like rodeos, more, I'd say cowboy shit, if you will. And I'm kind of going the opposite direction, where even though it's not a city, but that's what I'm craving. I feel like as this teenager angst is, the world doesn't get me. I'm alone in it, which is where the punk scene and skateboard scene come in. Yeah, and
So was it, um, and again, probably a little hard to get back into, 13-year-old Derek, but how much of it do you think was the evolution of you wanting, kind of that adventure in your life at sort of a maybe a more intense level than, camping in the backyard? Or was it, I don't know, kind of the culture surrounding, the punk scene, the skateboard scene, um, and wanting to be a part of that culture, or maybe it's like even just the aesthetic of it. Is there a way to have you thought about it? Have you looked back and said, "Oh yeah, the thing that I actually was craving most, getting into that was this," or was it just the whole picture was sort of attractive to you?
yeah, I think for me, maybe, looking back, it was sort of my escapism as like a way out, perhaps. Like, oh,
Mm.
if I crave this thing, I'll do other things. So as a way of maybe having the adventure and making sure that I could reach other areas, perhaps. And there was something about, that fringe life, or the sort of alternate communities and underground. Like, that was special to me. And I think it was especially at that age too, to kind of know something that your friends don't know, is exciting. To
Yeah.
be able to share something that, like, oh, I don't know that band, or oh, I've never heard of that, or I don't, what are you talking about? What is a skateboard? Not that they don't know what it is, but still it's not something that everybody else is doing. So there, I think that is empowering at that age, to have something that's kind of yours and not everybody's. And it wasn't that I was not wanting to share those things. Like, I wanted to be a part of my life, and I showed it with the things that I did, the attitudes I had, the clothes you wear. I mean, that is part of that. But yeah, I mean, I think again, it's that maybe more of looking for something different. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so that's helpful. That gives us a snapshot of, would you say that's sort of high
Yeah.
school years, or when did you when did that either get more intense, or when did you kind of transition into the next phase of your existence?
So I guess the kind of skateboard punk that was transitioning from middle school, high school during that time. Um, yeah, and then that sort of just continues until I get 16, and then I'm thinking about having a car, having the freedom, and I did get a car when I turned 16. I also got a job right away, so that was a really different, and I was working in Greensboro at the time, so it was a drive away. So it's having a sense of freedom, feeling like this kind of connection to another place, meeting friends that had lived in the city or when I say city, I'm talking about Greensboro, but it lived in that kind of environment, their childhood, and meeting people like that outside of maybe the typical school system, which I think most of us are probably connected with at that age. Yeah. And again, I think I'm also meeting people at different ages and age groups and things like that as well, which I feel like I'd already been fairly accustomed to.
Hmm. What was your first car?
It was a S10 truck, yeah, a 4.3 Vortec. I was really big into. I mean, at the time I'm like studying cars and motorcycles and bikes as well as like the skateboard scene. So all this kind of happening at the same time. So I don't think I lost my love for the multi wheels and the engines and that kind of thing as well. That curiosity stays in the background.
Okay. All right. Did you love that truck? Do you wish you still had it? Do
Oh
you
yeah.
still have it?
No, no, I don't still have that one. That was a total wreck in a snowstorm. So that's like another story. But
You
yeah,
wrecked it in a snowstorm?
yeah. It's like,
Oh,
the inevitable tale of a southern person driving in a snowstorm, not knowing what to do. Rear wheel drive, manual transmission, that kind of didn't
yeah.
take much.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah,
Okay, so by the time you're 16 or 17, you're breaking bones, you're wrecking cars,
yeah.
you're driving your mom absolutely insane, I suspect.
Oh yes, for sure.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so all right, so that's cool. So you're gaining some independence, you're driving around. Eventually, again, what does this turn into as you kind of go from high school to college, or how long do you stick around Greensboro before you're like, okay, my world needs to get even bigger than it is now. Like, what's the next thing here?
Yeah, then I guess I would say the next thing is like, I mean, it's still in my, and I'll wrap the high school years up. Still in my high school, I actually get my first street bike. I get a motorcycle, a CBR 600, uh,
Nice.
1993 CBR 600. Yeah, which was really, and this is before I turned 18 even. So that meant that my mom had to consent for it. She had to sign for it. I don't know how I convinced her to because she really was against it. She was really supportive of like the bikes, probably until the femur break. But even then, she still learned to manage. But yeah, she somehow signed for me to get a my first road bike at 16 and a half, or maybe I was 17 at that point, but it was definitely before 18. Um, but yes, I mean, I didn't proceed still stick around the area. I move out on my own before 18, so I ended up in Greensboro in some weird situations, living some like sort of, very DIY kind of punk ways and living by myself, and with a group of friends in Greensboro. Then I end up going to a junior college, a couple community colleges, and end up actually getting a undergraduate degree at UNC Greensboro. So yeah, with a BFA is what I ended up. And in my mind, I was going to get a BFA and then go to state college and do the MArch degree, which that never happened. I got the BFA and found a love for the visual arts and kind of stayed in that world ever since. And somehow found my way back to this idea of architecture, space, and but yeah, so it's been a funny world and how those things overlap. But after grad school, I did move to Los Angeles, so I was there for about a decade. Um, and I will say too that the Los Angeles thing we didn't talk about earlier, but came as a like in my mind as a kid, I was going to collect a car full of cans and put them all in my mind as a kid, it was going to be a Volkswagen van. I was going to collect bottles and cans that would lead me to riches when I got to California because I remember seeing on the back of cans and the back of bottles is like, you get these cash money for bottles, like 5 cents or 10 cents in California though. So so this heist or this kind of idea in my mind as a kid was like, well, if I collect all these free bottles in North Carolina and fill them up in a car, take them to California, cash them in, and then start a new life. Um, and yeah, so that ended up happening, but just quite not in the same way. I didn't take the bottles, but I took everything that I owned and put into a car and went across country. So I ended up in California for a decade.
Dude, I love that. First of all, I think that fantasy, like because same thing, I lived in a state where there was no return bottles for money. Like
Yeah.
you see that. And if I remember correctly, like it was like 5 cents in some states and 10 cents in like another.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean when you're of a certain age and like, 60 cents is like we were talking before, like,
Oh yeah.
you get a quarter in your Easter egg. The idea that you could find 10 bottles and get $1, I think crazy.
It's exciting. Yeah, that's
That's cool.
definitely.
I love that fantasy. Okay, so we're kind of weaving two things here. I just want to make sure I'm kind of tracking these things. So around 10 years old, you get a quad four-wheeler. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sometime around like 12, 13, dirt bikes kind of fold into the
Right.
equation.
Yep. Yep. So
Okay.
intermittent and dirt bikes, it's quad and dirt bikes, doing both. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then 16 and a half, 17 years old, the first road bike
Yeah.
gets, yeah. Okay. Cool. Um, so you head out to California. I mean, are bikes a continuous sort of thread at this point from, 10 years old on, or when you get out to California, is there a big gap and, you don't ride for 10 years or does it intensify? What happens when you get away from North Carolina?
No, so from North Carolina, I mean, I go to LA and so still I don't have a bike at the time. And I actually never owned my own bike while in California. So I do break away from it to some degree. But I do ride with others and a friend that had multiple bikes and would ride with him while in California, which is is legal to lane split. So you can split lanes in California, which was
Oh, wow.
very, very exciting. I mean, well, when I first got it was terrifying. I remember I first got to California and on the highway on the 10, and I was like, a bike just like zooms past me in between me and another car. I'm like, what in the hell's going on here? That can't be legal. I had no idea. My own, this naive mind, and then see like, cops doing it as well, and cops on motorcycles. Like, oh, this must be a thing. So yeah, so lane splitting's a thing in California, um, and to be honest, I think that's what piqued my curiosity again about motorcycles and being on a bike because the stories are real. I mean, Los Angeles is the worst traffic I've ever experienced at the time, and to me, to have to go 3 miles meant you might be in your car for 45 minutes.
Oh my God.
However, if you're on a motorcycle, that's a lot quicker. So yes, that's sort of maybe what reinstilled some of these previous loves for bikes. But again, never owning one, never committing to a bike while there because you also I had a tiny apartment and parking was a pain in the ass and all that. So
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
So, okay, before we get to moving from California to, I think you're coming back, I think, right? Is that right? You come back to North Carolina?
Yeah, so
Is that right?
I'll be back in a few years. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So
Yeah, yeah.
before we get to that, you said something earlier, and you could say what you want to say or don't say anything, but you were saying that you had some unique situations when you moved out of your house prior to 18. Was
Mhm.
that, I mean, I'm sure there were, were there good, I mean, we're talking like good adventures. I mean, things that you look back on now and go, oh my God, I can't believe as a 17-year-old, like I got to do this or I experienced this. Um, and I'm kind of thinking about it because a lot of people think, well, there's not much going on in Greensboro. So when you go to LA, oh man, it's going to get crazy out there. Or when you got to LA where you're like, "Ugh, this is nothing. You have no idea what I was doing when I was 17."
Well, I mean, definitely LA has a life of its own. I mean, very, very different place there. And yeah, I had the LA experiences probably unrelated to maybe the 17-year-old squatting kind of house experience. So that was probably the experience I was referring to then is like literally had a friend whose grandmother was in I guess there's sort of assisted homes, but you had to be at least maybe 70 to live in the apartment complex, but is your own home, like your own apartment. But she was staying with him and his mom, so she never stayed in the apartment. So I was squatting in her apartment. However, she would visit the apartment, about once a week, and he would just give me a heads up, and I'd have to move all my stuff out of it, for her to come check on her apartment and make sure it was clean. But also, I couldn't be seen by other people in the apartment complex. So that was the kind of experience that I alluded to. But and then there's sequential ones or different ones that kind of happen after that. But so very a different, I mean, very different type of adventure. So not dissimilar, I think, the LA experience was not that similar kind of living arrangement, punk scene that I was referring to. But still, I think LA did open my eyes to a new world of, still a scene that closely associated with music, punk, DIY, at this point.
Hmm.
Very, and I think my interest at the time, kind of in that technology hacker world, which led me to probably the jobs that I had while I was there. Like ended up working for Apple Computers for about 6 or 7 years, things like that, and meeting new people from that, and kind of falling in and out of that sort of scene and its relationship to art and design and things like that. So again, still plays a big part in where I am and what I'm doing now as well, but maybe not directly related to some of these other connections. Yeah.
Hmm. So this old woman, does she know you're living there?
No, not at all. That was the part. That's why I say I had to like, have all my stuff out anytime she's going to visit. Sometimes
That
it,
is so funny.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Would you put like I'm sure like the first couple times you like cleaned everything out, but then like by like the eighth, ninth time you gotta like move everything out. Do you start pushing the envelope and think, well, if I leave those yoo-hoos in the refrigerator, she's not gonna notice. Like, you know what I mean? Like, was there, is she really gonna notice there's an extra toothbrush? Like, or were you really good about getting everything out of there?
I mean, I was essentially living out of my trunk at the time. Like I had all my clothes, all my belongings were sort of in the this trunk of a Pontiac what was it? What's it called? A not Sunfire? Yeah, Sunfire. Pontiac Sunfire. So it was like I was pretty nomadic. I could quickly, leave one place and go to another. I was part of that life at that point. Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, did eventually get caught. I can't remember what gave it. Oh, you know what? It was a neighbor. Someone seeing me coming in and out enough that started to ask her about me and who I was, that kind of thing. And
Okay.
we tried to play it off like it was her grandson, which was a friend that I knew.
I thought
He
you were
was
gonna
just
say you were a
coming.
boyfriend.
Yeah, yeah, that he was just coming in checking on the place, but yeah. The cat was out of the bag, and then it was kind of one of those things like, you can't be doing this. This is considered fraud because, it's a subsidized home and that kind of thing. So it's, yeah, life moved on. And I moved to other scenarios of crashing friends' couches and yeah, that became the new life and until I kind of managed to get my own place.
Hmm. Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So let's wrap up this part so then we can really get into the motorcycles. But you're in LA and you make a decision to come on back east to North Carolina. Is that right?
Yeah. So I was kind of, living in this world of LA, mentioning being stuck in traffic all the time. I was living in a world where I was working a good job, like I said, mentioned at Apple Computers, but my time for myself and my own work, which this time is more two-dimensional art making and painting and drawing, was just little less and less, to the
Hmm.
point where I was like, I got to make a change. And I had a friend in North Carolina, is in Raleigh, that had a studio, and he's like, listen, come to North Carolina, come back to Raleigh. You can be in the studio with me. I won't even charge you anything for the studio. Rent super cheap. So I was, had some savings. Thought I could make it work, and I did. Packed everything back up and made the trek back to North Carolina in a good way. I didn't feel any sort of remorse about it. Like I felt like it's the right move. And yeah, landed in Raleigh, North Carolina, and essentially hit the ground running. Had like a studio. He had more freelance design work than he could handle, so I was just doing the work that he was getting. He was just giving me the money for it, that kind of thing, and this lended me the time to make the work I wanted to make, and just helped me. I was able to afford to kind of live that life and make that work. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. Cool. So now, and so would you say much has changed since then? Like, or you're like, yep, once I landed in Raleigh, now, kind of in Greensboro, back and forth, or, is there a big jump in there somewhere? Again, a shift of some sort, or do things, am I caught up with like the Derek of today is kind of the Derek who lands in Raleigh?
I think so. I think that Derek today is that very much that same Derek. Again, finding community in these places, whether it's here or there, you know, making friends, collaborating, you know, having these sort of creative inputs that are shared, creative ideas that are shared and you know, outlets that are shared as well with some sense of community and connection.
Hmm.
You know, I think there was a time where this is the time where I'm starting to realize what I do need, and like what I crave as an individual and as a maker and as an artist as well. Um, so those types of things I think feel pretty grounded at this point.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, first of all, as your friend, I so I'm really interested in hearing all of that because I didn't. I mean, a lot of that I had no idea about, and next time we go out and get sushi, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions that time does not allow me to do right now. So there's just sort of this very personal, kind of reason why I'd like to hear those things. But in relation to your motorcycles and this motorcycle collection, um, one of the reasons I wanted to kind of dig a little bit deeper than maybe some other guests into your background. And you correct me if I'm wrong, but there just seems to be something fairly special about people who are really into motorcycles. You know what I mean? I don't mean like, the casual person who just, kind of one day wakes up and goes like, "Hey, I got some extra money, I'm going to buy this thing," but someone who's really kind of invested um into motorcycles. It feels to me, at least my experience has been that there's something different. There's a different perspective on life with a lot of those individuals. So I think that's why I wanted to really kind of figure out a little bit more about where you come from.
Hmm.
Um, so when I say that, when I'm saying something like, yeah, my experience is, people who are really into motorcycles, it feels like they have a different perspective than maybe some other people. Does that ring true to you? Does that sound right? Or am I just sort of romanticizing something that I'm just not really involved with the way you are?
No, no, I think you're kind of right on it, and I'll be completely honest. We've been weaving this story, and I'm like, sorry, I don't know what the hell this has to do with motorcycles, or my collection. But you're right on the money, and like I think that the things that I've found, and the reason I'm in the world of motorcycles, if you will, is has so much to do with the things that we've been talking about. And I don't know that I've made the connection until like right now when we're talking about it. But again, it's like now that we've told those stories, or I've told those stories, I can kind of start to see it's like, oh, wait a minute, that motorcycle culture is that sort of fringe. It is sort of that underground still. It's that connection to a smaller community, if you will. They're highly popular. They're not like as rebellious as the Hells Angel days, but they're still very much, in some ways that lowbrow society still probably that it gets associated. But again, seeing that I do have interest in those types of cultures and those worlds and seeing that connection maybe even with the younger Daredevil Derek if we seeing that it's kind of fun to kind of think about that now and just have that realization. I think that yeah, there's a strong connection between those worlds. But the the view of the world on a motorcycle is like no other as well. Like I think when I'm riding, the amount of the things that just leave my mind, escape my mind. I mean, it's crazy. And you'll hear, I'm sure, a ton of people talk about it, but it's either their therapy is what they call it, or their church, or their whatever. It's like the thing you're doing is all about being on that bike and sort of understanding, being aware of your environment, paying attention, um, being aggressive as well as cautious, like simultaneously. Your 360, or not 360, but your kind of complete view of the world that's very different from that in a car. You're experiencing the world on the horizon, but at a speed that's not walking. Yeah, there's so much unique, I think, to that, that it becomes a really special place. And I find it again kind of and when I find it again is when I come back to Greensboro, actually.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, yeah,
What so there's two things I want you to kind of follow up on.
yeah,
Um maybe we'll do the first one just first. Not being a person who is in the motorcycle culture, right? And I suspect a lot of people who are listening aren't either. Give us to the best of your ability, what is that culture, or how do you relate to it? What are the things about it that you're attracted to? Um, because I think in many ways it is um, it's not that it's elitist, but there's a barrier to entry, and I don't know that it's just having a bike, you know what I mean? Um, so for someone who hasn't been able to kind of cross over into that world a little bit, um, from your perspective, what is it? What is it? What are you attracted to? What kind of energy, do you get from it or fulfillment? What are the things that you love about being in that world?
yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's sort of, again, even going back to the conversation earlier, it is the one, it's all about you and being alone in this world. You really are, you're paying attention to yourself, the road, the bike, and you on the bike. So it's like this hyper awareness of you as an individual in the world. So there's that part of it in the writing. But then there is like the community part of like, being on a bike, riding a bike and sharing maybe those vulnerabilities and sharing those experiences with a community, in a smaller community. And I mean, you mentioned maybe not having like sort of an immediate connection by just owning a bike, but I would say there you kind of do just by having just by being on the bike. Maybe it's not by owning it, but when you're on a bike, I mean, you see somebody else on the bike, you have a connection. There's an immediate connection there. You're both
Hmm.
choosing to to be in the world in a very similar situation with similar vulnerabilities and you also would probably assume that you have some sort of, you know, you share a value in adventure, if nothing else. Uh, yeah, yeah. So I think there's
Hmm.
that there is a sense of immediate connection. But I think there's like the flip side of the coin that there's also the individual in it, having the individual experience as well. Like, obviously when I'm on the bike, I'm alone. I'm in my helmet. I mean, sure, I could connect to a headset with other people on a ride, but still, it's about me and being okay with being alone in that world.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting, in a sense that I mean, I haven't thought about it to this depth until right now. But it's like if you join, first of all, when I think of like motorcycle culture, I mean, I do think of kind of clubs,
Yeah.
and whatever that club is, right? There's, I guess, outlaw type clubs and then, social clubs and kind of everything in between. Um, but I guess somehow in my mind, I was almost thinking like, when someone joins like the Boy Scouts, right, as a kid, they join because they want to learn how to live in the woods. They want to learn how to, start fires without, a lighter.
Yeah.
Um, but what you're saying is this is kind of the opposite. It's like, no, no, we all know how to make fires without lighters, and therefore we're going to kind of get up together because we all kind of understand each other in a way that other people don't. Is that right?
Um, I think that's a part of it. Yeah. I mean, I think that'd be one perspective to think about that type of connection. Yeah, that's a hard one. Maybe I wasn't a very successful Boy Scout. I made it to Webelos and that was it. So maybe that's why it's so hard, even though I love camping. I don't know why I did. Um, but I think, now that you mention that, it's getting me into sort of this, thought of like the type of writing I am into now is that adventure, which we call adventure writing.
Hmm.
So it typically pairs with camping as well. So again, now you're sort of because there is this world of motorcycles. You have the outlaw clubs, you have the sort of off-road riding, you have the street race You have the track race riders. So you have these different, I guess, nuances or smaller sectors of the motorcycle world.
Hmm.
And they feel very, yeah, there's so many different ways to narrow some of those down.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think there's a lot of smaller ideas of what it is to be in that kind of motorcycle community as well. But there is still, I think, the larger connection where it's like I'd feel, fine pulling up on my vintage Triumph to like a group of Harley riders that are Hells Angels or whatever. Well, we probably wouldn't have a lot of the same political views or things like that, perhaps, but but I wouldn't feel out of place talking to anybody kind of in that world of the bike world, the motorcycle world.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So well, so let's jump into the kind of present day, and the bikes that you have, and really, I don't, I think maybe you know this or maybe you don't, but before we started, we were working in the same building, but we weren't working in the same department. So I knew you, but I didn't really know you, and I would sort of, it'd be a nice day outside, and I'd pull up to the building, find a parking spot, and I'd see a bike parked, and I'd think, man, that bike is awesome. And later on, I'd be talking to somebody, and I'd be like, whose bike is that? And they'd be like, oh, it's Derek's. I'm like, oh, cool. And then, I don't know, a week later, kind of the same thing would happen, but it would be a different bike.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'd be like, oh, that bike's awesome. Whose is that? And they'd be like, oh, that's Derek's. It's like, wait, what? He's got two bikes? Well, all right, that's cool. And then, I don't know, a couple weeks later, it'd be the same story, different bike. So, yeah, I was like, oh my God, what's going on here? Um, so you do have some really, really cool bikes. So what is the current stable of bikes that you have? Um, maybe go through just which ones are running, which ones are not running. But give us a pretty clear picture of, what you have access to right now in your stable of motorcycles.
Well, yeah, I probably can't name them all by memory, which is I don't, maybe that makes it a true collection. Is when you can't even recall them all. But I will say that the majority, like what I call my prides, if you will, are the ones I really love. Which is mainly vintage British bikes. That
Okay.
would be the ones that I kind of like, oh, that's the thing I'm in. But then you start to tell me to name it, and I'll start naming all these other things. Like, wait a minute, that's not British or vintage. Why did why did you say you British vintage? But if I could name them, so I have my modern bike. So it's usually easier for me to go through by timeline. So I have some
Yeah,
modern.
and I was going to say when you say without getting too technical, but when you say vintage, British or modern, what time frames are we looking at here?
So the oldest bike have it be British BSA 1949. But then I have like some, 2022 KTM 1290. So that's my sort of range,
Wow.
if you will. That's the spectrum.
1949 to 2022. This is the range of bikes that you have.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Wow, cool. Okay, great. That's cool.
yeah. Um, so so the so yeah, you want me to go through and name a few just
Yeah. Just so while we don't have video on this, if someone could, because I'll tell you what, the bike that you have, I don't know, you'll have to remind me, but do you have one with like a British, I don't know if it's a BSA with a silver tank,
yeah.
and do
Yeah.
you also have one with a blue tank?
Yep. I have
Yeah, those two, I love those bikes. So I'm just saying, if you name them, someone could look them up as they're listening to this, and so yeah, be specific and kind of the year and the model if you're able to.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the if we start at let's start at the top, usually easier. The KTM, this is the 2022 is that one's a bigger bike, a touring bike. It's the 1290 Adventure. So that would be, if I had to go across country, that's the one I would grab. If I had to pack all my camping gear, that'd be the one I grab. Then I go into like I have another KTM. KTM is also Hungarian. Austrian, sorry, not Hungarian, Austrian company. So that one's the KTM 690 Adventure. So that one's going to be much more nimble. I can carry some stuff, not as much stuff, but it's a lot more fun in the trails, tighter tracks, more adventure riding off-road, with some on-road capabilities. Then I'm going into, let's see, what's next? So I got a pretty big gap. Probably next is like I have a Yamaha flat tracker that's from the 80s. Oh, I missed one in the middle. I have a BMW, an R100 GS Adventure. So that one's going to be again another adventure bike. So early for its days, 1000 cc. So that was a 93, I think. Yeah, that sounds about right. Then the flat tracker, that would be the Yamaha XS 650. Oh man. Then I'm sure I'm skipping some in the middle. I have like a couple little Honda XR, I'm gonna say, yeah, XR 400. I have a 70s Yamaha Enduro, like a DT 125, 150. Again, I can't even remember half of them. It's like the list goes on and that kind of oddities. And these, when I'm getting into the DT is not quite running. That was a project bike for me.
Mm.
Uh,
Hmm.
so I have some of those in the mix. The others are all running. All these are for sale, by the way. If you want, if you any of them interest you, let me know. I'm sort of kidding. That's another problem I have. That's why I have a collection. So I have a hard time selling any of them. Um, then going down the list is probably now's when I maybe are getting into um, the British vintage. So the earliest, or excuse me, latest British vintage will be my Norton Commando 850. So that one's going to be a 74, I believe. And that's the creme de la creme. That's probably one I won't get rid of. For a vintage bike, it just so smooth, such a fun
Hmm.
bike. It is still right hand shift. That one's also GP shift, meaning like um, that the first is up and the rest are down, which is reverse shift for more modern bikes. But that's maybe a whole nother story. I don't want to get sidetracked, but the
Right.
the time in which the shift changes from the modern bikes are your left hand shift, so the shifter's on the left side, whereas all the vintage bikes can be on the right side. Um, but so then I go into the Triumphs. So I have a number of Triumphs. 650, which is a little later oil and frame. I have three T100 that are the 500 cc Triumphs. The latest one I have is the 72 model, and the earliest one I have is a 65 or 64, 64. So I have too many of those. And then the BSAs are in the mix of that as well. So I have an A50, two A65s, and then a B32 B33s or B31 and B33. That one being the earliest, which is right now for me. That one's a project bike, so I need to get the magneto going on it and get it running. Uh,
Hmm.
so that was on my rough breakdown.
Wow.
Like I said, I probably missed a few. Um,
No, this is, no, that's great. I mean, so this is what's so interesting, and I think it's why it takes a while to kind of get to even a good question, right? Meaning, if I don't know about your background, if I don't know about what you have, if I don't know, I don't even know if I don't know that, I can't come up with something that I think is really interesting, as a question. But now that I think I have a better picture, um, I mean, one thing that kind of floats to the surface because you are an artist.
mhm.
You are a professor, you have a technology background, but I know a lot of your art incorporates technology, but there's also a lot of analog thing, so you kind of have a foot in the analog world, a foot in the digital world, you know, the technical world, the very sort of philosophical world. So I'm curious, like when you think about motorcycles or you look at your motorcycles, do you see them more as machines or do you see them more as works of art? What exactly are you, through your eyes, what are you seeing when you look at these motorcycles?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think both. I mean, not to it's a maybe like a cop out of an answer, but I think it's both. I mean, it's all of the above. I mean, I love this idea, and again, my artwork is all about this too. It's about a system. It's about these systems together. So I think it's the machine, like how it works in unison. It is the shapes, the beauty of the actual bike itself. The level of engineering that goes into them, but also yet so simplistic, easy to work on. So I think there's a deep connection to them and my own practice, but at the same time, it's a way for me to turn off one thing in my mind and focus on another. So they do become sort of this world in their own, but also surprisingly, and maybe not surprisingly, maybe because it's still part of me. But still, they are connected to the same things that I think I think about and that interest me in the world of art and design as well. Um, so I think there is, it's an escape or a moment of, taking a break from one thing, but also deeply connected to it simultaneously. Which I think is like, why I can live in both worlds so easily. Yeah.
Hmm. Um, yeah, I'd love for you to explore that a little more.
Hmm.
Um, and maybe, and I don't know if this helps to kind of stimulate that the thinking more, or telling us a little more. But when you work on a motorcycle, um, are you adding to it in the way that an artist kind of adds to the world? So you have this object that is really beautiful. It is a feat of engineering. There's something really incredible about just the object as it is when you receive it. But then you can work on these things, right? And you can make modifications and you can keep them running and you can, put yourself into it. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Is there a bit of that as well?
Yeah.
And does
Well,
that relate to the art, production? And I guess maybe what I'm trying to get to is what is that view of the world that you're exploring in your artwork and how it crosses over into the your life with motorcycles? Because I think that, yeah, I mean, you're alluding to it, but that it's there, and I just want to understand what it is as best I can.
yeah, I think it's multifaceted and multi-layered in that. I think maybe the strongest connection in the work that I make in artwork might be more connected to the actual writing, moments of writing for me as an individual.
Mm.
Um, but then there's the actual making of the artwork, and then also the working on the bikes, and I feel like those two are connected in a ways of which it's often both of them exploring the idea of a system or an existing system when you talk about like those technologies that I work with and things like that. um I think in the motorcycle world I'm understanding them so that I can repair them, so that I can get them running and get them to become a machine again. Because, I should preface that too. A lot of the bikes that I'm buying, and the reason I have such an extensive collection is because I'm buying them when they're either not running or been discarded or need a lot of work. So I'm bringing them in as like projects, and then I see the beauty and the design of them, which you kind of mentioned this in the question. But I often don't find myself trying to aesthetically change them in any way. Like I actually want them to exist in the life that they've lived. Thinking, which I think, you also mentioned of philosophy, like this kind of idea of phenomenology, if you will. Like it gets connected into the motorcycle, working on a motorcycle. It's like, no, I want one to see its history that might not have been me. But there's still you know, I'm adding to that history as we all do by existing in space together. So I think that's maybe the more philosophical connection to the motorcycles and those relationships. But I'm often and again, my work often takes form of like one, me identifying a problem and then solving it. And I think that my collection of motorcycles is that as well. Like I have to understand what the problem is, what's going on with the machine, why it's not working, and then go through this process of fixing that, solving problems. Um, which is not always a mode of creative making for people, but I think it's always been at least a part of my creative making is it tends to be problem solving in some ways. And even if the problems aren't real, I create the problems, which is part of the mode of making. And I think that's also maybe, I'm tying it a little bit to the more professional art side is like why my artwork also is strongly connected to the idea of design and architecture, because usually those are about solving something, solving a problem.
Hmm.
So that might feel like a long-winded answer, um, but just kind of how I could think about those two connections. And I think again, there's so many different layers that I think I could draw on, and probably talk more if one's of more interest. But even, I mean, I'll even preface too that how I got back into the world of motorcycles was, I mean, one, I did purchase a motorcycle. It was 1979 Kawasaki KZ. So I purchased a motorcycle when I was in Greensboro. 'Cause I just didn't have quite the many friends and community here when I first got here. And it's like, oh, let me just get back into the bikes and start riding again. Um, but then my sort of falling into that I don't know, rabbit hole, or maybe it's a wormhole. I don't even know which kind of, it was definitely a hole. How about that?
Right.
Falling back into it was because I went to a motorcycle shop and I needed some help on getting some parts and I went to a shop and the guy asked me what I did and I told him and told him what kind of world I was into and he's like, "Oh, well, I need some things designed. I need some help on some t-shirts. If you help me screen print, I'll do the bike work for you." So we made this kind of connection exchange with like I would do design work, help him with his creative outputs, and he would help me with my, kind of motorcycle, in this specific motorcycle, getting it running better, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And that led into then, fix that bike and then got another bike and did more design work for him. And then I was doing work and he would give me a free place to store bikes. And, you give me space, my collection grows. I mean, that's the collector mindset. Like all my collections would grow if I had more space.
Did you, yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because you, in the last 5 minutes, you've said a lot of things that a lot of roads that we could go down, and all of them would be really interesting. And so I'm trying to pick. I'm like, which one of these?
Yeah.
Um, well, let me ask you. This is actually a fairly basic one. But the way the way you're kind of describing this, or maybe the way I'm understanding now, the crossover between your artistic life and the motorcycle life, and where these things kind of merge. Do you remember? You listed the motorcycles you have now. Was there a motorcycle in your past that it was the first one that really felt like yours? This was it was something different, right? Maybe the first quad that you ever had, like, oh, this is sort of a fun thing and I'm getting around. But maybe you didn't have all those kind of philosophical kind of thoughts. So is there a bike in your mind that really stands out as something kind of transitioned when I got that bike?
Oh man, that's hard. I mean, I feel like I mean I could almost say that every bike I own has been a first love.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Like I don't have the one. I mean, and again, it goes back to that, I sort of joked about selling one and have a hard time with it. It's because I love them all. Like I don't know. And really, if I think back, it's like the love of them all is probably like the joy that they give me. And again, that's another, talking about multi-layers, another thing where it's like it gives me joy not only to get them running, but keep them running, keep them in a shape where I can ride at any time. But then just like the thing that their output, which gives me the freedom of just getting on the road, like being that kind of, you know, person in the moment. Everything else shutting off. Like that's the first love as well. I mean, I think that's part of it, which you then attach to the one that you're on that moment. And you know, and again, I think that might be the connection, you know, before realizing it and at the early age is like sort of I think there is I mean, there's an excitement, exhilaration that comes with getting on any motorcycle. Doesn't matter if it's like oh yeah, I have a mini bike. Forgot about the mini bike. But yeah, it doesn't matter if it's a mini bike. It doesn't matter if it's the 1200. It's like any of them are exciting. They're fun. Um, and that, yeah, that was with the first bike I got on, you know, as a kid. It gives you the opportunity to not be in this place, to be in any other place, to kind of move through the world, to move through the woods, to go to a campsite you couldn't get to on foot, in a quicker amount of time, or you know, whatever that is. So again, I think it's that possibility of being anywhere. So that, and I, that might not have been a direct answer to your question. I think I got off on another tangent, which seems to be a running theme. Um,
No, I got to tell you, this is awesome. Dude, this is why I love having these conversations because first of all, I will never look at a motorcycle the same again. No, but I mean, I really mean that, right? I mean, I don't know, the way I don't know, just hearing the way you interact with these things is very eye-opening. And
Mhm.
it's also very attractive. I mean, it's really like, oh my God. I mean, it's pretty hard for me not to think like, yeah, I should go get a motorcycle, right? I mean, um, because because I think like you said, it's so multi-layered. It
Mhm.
sort of touches so many aspects of a life, your life. Um, it's not I think okay, most people, right, if they don't have a motorcycle, and let's just say they're not car people, right? They're not into like, cars or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, you think of your car as this thing that gets you from point A to point B. Um, and some people enjoy that more than others, right? So I get it. But the idea that you and there's a question here too, because I'm almost going to like kind of throw out some categories here, right? So it feels like there is the visual, the aesthetic, the
Mhm.
artistic kind of side of the motorcycle. There is the philosophy of the motorcycle, or the way of life, kind of again, how you break that down is, up
Yeah.
to somebody else. Um, there's the mechanics of it, the appreciation of the mechanics in the way that you might appreciate, a mechanical watch, there's the being able to work on it, kind of add to this thing in some way, or at least maintaining, keep it going. Then there's the riding, the meaning the moments that you're actually on the bike and you're moving and you're seeing the world in a different way. Then there's the community, and then after all that, you get to the collector part. You know what I mean? Like there's so much of that. So my question is, of all of these things, is there one that kind of floats to the top in terms of importance or connection to you? Meaning, if you had to get rid of all the others, like, you know what, you can't work on the bikes, you're not going to be part of a club, you can be in the club, but you can't ride the bike, you can be the mechanic, but you can't be the rider. You know what I'm saying? Like, is there one aspect of this motorcycle life that rises to the pinnacle of like, yeah, but that's my favorite part? Or you're like, no, it's all even. If I can't work on them, if I can't be with a group of friends when I'm not riding, then I don't even want to be involved.
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, and it's a really hard one to answer. I mean, I do think that the reason I love them is all of those. It is sort of it's you know, it's the working on them, it's the collecting, the collection, it's the restoring, reviving, it's that sort of being that savior. It is the sense of community. Man, it's the art of the machine. It's the zen of the mechanic. It's all of it. I think that the one that oh wow. Yeah. If I had to put one at the top, it still is like I mean, yeah, it's the me being on the bike and riding as an individual. It still is that time. It's that moment that I have with it and being on it. That's the one that I just couldn't. I don't want to be without. I think if there was some reason I had to be, whatever it's like health related or whatever, I think I'd find joy in the other aspects. But the one that really keeps me interested in all the aspects, I think, is the riding and being on that bike as an individual. Whether I'm actually riding alone completely or whether it's, me and one other friend in the woods and I can't see where he is and he can't see where I am, but we know we're going to meet up together, for that camp dinner. I think that's the part that would be hard to be without. I mean, I think it fuels all the other curiosities, um, and it fuels all the other the love of all the other. Um, and I think
Mm,
that, the others feed that maybe that desire and that connection, perhaps.
hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to ask. I want you to really kind of tell me about the riding experience. But before, and you have, right? But
Mhm.
I want you to be as sort of descriptive as possible. But I think that's going to be the wrap up question. So just because hearing you say that now was sort of a speculation that maybe that's, kind of the top of the pyramid.
Mhm.
And I'd love for you to tell us, again, through your eyes, your perspective, exactly what that is, from the moment of like thinking about going for a ride to, getting off the bike and hearing that engine, shut off. Like I want, but before you answer that, there's just a couple of maybe short little things that I just want to kind of fill in quickly.
Yeah.
You talked about being hurt on rides before. There's risk involved. Is that something that does it play a big role, or is it something you just put to the side and go, yep, that's just a part of life.
Yeah, it's not something that I've ever fixated on or been able to fixate on. And,
Hmm.
I think that obviously maybe has come through with even my childhood stories as well. It's like I've never really been a person to fixate on the fear or consequence, to maybe even a level of being, even maybe a level that one needs at times. So I think it's not something that I think about. And I have found that I was in certain types of writing, really being the off-road writing. Like I used to write a lot more heavily in off-road sessions or seasons. I was competing, not in a really professional level, but like, upper C class level, B class, where I was going and riding more enduro rides. So this is all off-road, so dirt bikes. And the dirt bike thing is like it's not if you're gonna fall. It's just like, well, when are you gonna fall and how are you gonna save it kind of thing. Um, and though I love something really about that type of writing is very technical. That one you're solving problems as you're riding at the speed you're riding is that one's exhilarating for different reasons.
Hmm.
However, it comes with big consequences because, again, you are going to drop the bike. You're going to get thrown from the bike or leave the bike at some point. But it's just, and then this is where it goes back to maybe that sort of skateboarding too. Is like you got to learn to fall. I mean, that's part of it. Learning to ride is learning to fall. Um,
Hmm.
but I'm in my 40s now. I'm getting there. I'm of age where those things matter. And it's maybe kind of a young body game. So that's probably one that I pulled back on. Like I'm not riding competitively at all for the dirt bike. I still will get on a dirt bike, and I still have a dirt bike or dirt bikes plural. Oh yeah, I forgot about another Triumph I had. Giant trail. But yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that might be the only time I've been more aware in the recent with the risk. So I've stopped riding at any kind of competitive level. I suffered like some injuries to my knees recently, or recently being the last decade. Had like a heat stroke and a concussion one. So there's those types of things where I'm like, okay, let me pull back on some of that type of riding.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. You said something in there which probably should be a t-shirt if it's not already. Learning to ride is learning to fall.
Yeah,
Dude,
yeah.
that's awesome. I mean, is this can we relate that to life in general? Is that something you've thought about? Like,
Yeah, yeah. No, it's true. I mean, I'm sure it exists in t-shirts in some form, but I didn't get that one off the t-shirt. But yeah, maybe. Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, that can be a life lesson for sure. But yeah, there's definitely a technical part of it. And
dude, I
again,
love that.
same thing with skateboarding. That was the first thing. Like if you're scared to fall in skateboarding, like you can't skateboard. I mean that's why a lot of people don't. I'll be honest. I mean, it's like if that's something you can't get over, then you just can't do it. But I mean, then, yeah, like you said, maybe that's with everything in life. If you can't if you can't be okay with failing at that thing, then you probably just shouldn't do it, or maybe you can't do it. No. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because earlier when I asked you about like, kids and, what would you say to parents about letting your kids kind of go out in the woods and, I mean, it seems to me that so many people now would not let their kids camp in the woods, even if it's right behind their backyard or behind their house, because, you know, people are afraid. They're just really afraid,
Yeah.
right? And the parents, they're not going to stay up all night long staring at that tent, right? So, if you're not under the roof, then the parents aren't comfortable, right? So it's interesting now that an hour later, we're getting to this thing, which actually sums it up really nicely. Learning to ride is learning to fall, and what that means, I think in the bigger picture. I mean, yeah, I think 100%. I think you could apply that to anything in life.
Oh yeah.
And if you aren't willing to learn how to fall, in some things you could just say, well, I don't want to skateboard, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of like making friends, getting into romantic relationships,
Oh
going
yeah.
after the career that you want, like then it actually becomes really critical that you have the confidence to learn how to fall. I
Yeah.
don't know. That's yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think there's that sort of philosophy of like even designs like, fail fast, fail often, or fail first, fail often, or fail first, fail fast, like all those. Like, I mean, I think
Yeah.
super, super relevant.
Yeah, yeah. So in terms of the, again, kind of another quick one here. Do you prefer the kind of casual ride, or I do know that you've been in races before, races of kind of varying degrees, I guess some more friendly, some more competitive. But if you had to pick one, what do you prefer?
Oh, so I mean, my all-time favorite would be like I used to ride this race called a Vintage 500, Vintage 1000. It's like the vintage class. So everything's pre 70. Well, I've been in ones that were pre 70, but also I think the one of the costs pre 78. But anyways, um, that race and type of riding is more the adventure riding, but it's like you have to have everything packed with you, like all your camping gear that you need. You don't have to have your food, but you have to have all your camping gear packed with you. It's usually a race of either 500 miles or 1,000 miles,
Hmm.
um, which is multi-day. So you're looking at the 500 vintage 500s are 3 days, the vintage thousands are 5 days. Um, the goal in that race is really just to finish. So it is you're sent out in kind of a team of three to five. So if one person breaks down that team, you wait, help each other get going again, and then finish as a team. And then there's other sort of teams that are behind you, or hopefully behind you. Sometimes
Right.
sometimes they're ahead of you. Um, but that would be, I'd say, my favorite type of writing. So it includes more off-road, so probably 70%. And when I say off-road, I'm thinking like we're talking about like fire trails, dirt roads. So 70% unpaved, I guess is probably a better way of saying it.
Hmm.
So it can include like, hill climbs, creek crossings, things like that. But a lot of times they are I'll should air quote like state maintained, and that they have some level of gravel, but they do cross creeks and things like that. Um,
Hmm.
so I love the multi-day where you're carrying camping gear and camping, and so you're sort of in that thing for a longer period of time, even overnight, and sort of staying in that same mindset. And your campsites are often without cell service, so you're not on the phone, not sending emails, checking emails, texts, or anything like that. Um, Having the campfire, having the meals, then waking up the next morning and starting bright and early at 8:30 in the morning, the race begins again. Um, so yeah, that would by far would be my preferred ride. And it's
Hmm.
another one where this one's no GPS either. So this is a roll chart only. So you have a little roll chart that you're following. So, go 5 miles, turn left, go another 3 miles, turn right, go 1.4 miles, cross a creek, that kind of direction, sense of direction. Um, and then, I think everything from that still, I think the type of writing I prefer is based around that. Like I like the more scenic route. Like and there's a sense of speed that's with it. It's not slow riding, but there is a sense of adventure with all of it. So that would by far is my favorite style of writing. And again, different ways to approach it, whether it's through race or even there's also this thing called the BDR, which is back road discovery routes, I think. I could be messing that up. But it's a known sort of community of riders that are into the adventure that have maps that go, let's say, from upstate New York all the way to the Canadian border. So they have the Northeast, the Southeast, they have the Midwest, West Coast BDRs. So that's the type of writing that I love.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, so your favorite bikes in your collection are these vintage BSA bikes, and
You can say
this
in Triumph. Yeah. Let's say
and
British. Let's get them all.
okay, sorry, British, yeah. Okay, so the vintage British,
Yeah.
um, the ride that you just described, was like pre 78, you said? Is that right? Or
Yeah,
maybe
they have two classes. I think they have one that the bikes has to be pre 78. And then they have another class where it has to be pre 70. Uh,
okay.
yeah.
So is there something, do you think that that sort of subset of motorcycles for you, is a bit of an escape of our, kind of current digital world, or is there something about, kind of older machines that have more of a, I don't know, a connection or a sense of, a feeling of honesty, with those things that are kind of void of,
Mm.
all of our modern digital, bombardment. Like, is that part of the draw to that type of riding or that type of motorcycle?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the kind of simplicity in it. So there's a simplicity in it as far as lack of technology. But then there's also the sort of ability where you have to be able to maintain and work on it.
Hmm.
So that's definitely part of the challenge. So, talking about what's your favorite part of, the kind of when we're narrowing down this sections of the writing, the beauty of that race is that it's all of the things. Like you have to be able to work on the bike, you have to have a sense of community and share knowledge, help each other out. You have to be able to be in alone in your own head and ride the trails and do the technical ride. So yeah, so I think that's all of it. And then also I think in the kind of classifications why they do it in the 78 or pre-78 pre-70s is the technology that happens in motorcycle suspension changes, and it sort of changes the rider's game. Like things become a lot roads and challenges become a lot easier with a lot more development in suspension and geometry. Uh,
Hmm.
so they don't, I don't think they do it in a way of like trying to make it, I mean, it is more abusive on your body, I'll argue. But the the rideability and knowing how to ride technical sections with older technologies like suspension things, it's more about you and the bike, not the bike doing it, not the bike getting you through it. Like you have to get the bike through it.
Hmm.
So there's a
Hmm.
little bit of that as well that I think happens in that type of ride. So,
Hmm.
we talk about technology, but I think it's more than just the digital technology. It's even like the kind of other levels of technology for those rides.
Hmm. That must be so interesting. I mean, everything you said, of course, is, so interesting and fascinating. And, for somebody who wants their mind and their body to be engaged that way, like that's, yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Um, so it seems like when you're doing these different events or going, with these different groups of people you ride with, you're, there's a, what's the right word? There's a variety in the types of people you're riding with. I mean,
Mhm.
right? Is that right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
okay. Which again makes it so interesting that you kind of have this motorcycle, and in some ways it's your kind of ticket to entry, but it's not always you're not always entering the same world. It's yeah, there's this common thing, but the people who are interested in the ride that you just described versus being at like Bike Week in I don't know, Daytona or something, right? I mean, there's a different, right?
Oh,
There's
yeah.
a different vibe.
Very different vibe. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, which is cool. So just a couple more things, and then I want you to wrap it up with that again, that description of the ride. Would you say that bikes have different personalities?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think, and every bike gives me a different personality. I would even argue.
Well, that was actually the real question, and you beat me to it.
Oh
Do
yeah.
do you have a different personality on each of your different bikes?
Oh, completely. I mean, you put me on the smaller KTM 690 and send me downtown. Oh, I'm a complete hooligan. I'm like, grandmother's nightmare. Like I'm just like, oh, you can't get out of my way fast enough, and I'm probably riding a wheelie past you. Um, and it makes me a person sometimes I'm not proud of, but it's just a fun bike. Like it's a fun bike like no others. It's not a vintage bike. It drags me down the road. I'm not dragging it down the road. But again, like I think that's also part of it. Like it's like I'm yeah, that one, those bikes make me do things I probably shouldn't do. I'm a person we talked about like, fears. I don't have them until it's too late. I was like, oh man. And I will reflect. I mean, I did something even on this last ride I did last weekend in the mountains on some dirt roads where I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna leave the group. I gotta get this out of my system." And I started riding so fast down this hill and came to a curve where I was like, "I think I may be going off this mountain."
Oh,
I didn't have enough back brake without sliding out to get me down to the speed I needed to. But I made it. I'm here. I'm here. I made it. But it was one of those moments like after the fact, I was like, whoa, that was really dumb. Like I need to slow it down. Um, so I think that, again, every bike has its personality and that gives me a new personality, which is part of the fun of it and probably why I have so many. Um,
yeah,
each
isn't
one,
that
yeah,
something?
each one's good for something different and does something a little different. And, it's like no bike's the same and every ride's different based on the bike. Yeah.
That's again, this is what I mean when I say like I'll never look at a motorcycle the same again. I never thought about. I mean, I guess there's something on the surface that you go, "Oh, look, that guy's on a Harley, that girl's on a Harley." You know, they're dressed a certain way. You go, clearly there's a connection between the bike and the personality. But I have never thought about the next day that person gets on, a BMW bike,
Mm.
and like it didn't, yeah, that had never occurred to me. That's really, really interesting. So before we get to that last ride description, if somebody wanted to get into this, I mean, you obviously, have been, you got introduced at a fairly young age. But maybe, someone, it didn't happen that way. And someone has listened to this and they're like, oh man, that seems kind of cool. I want to put my toe in the water. I want to, kind of try this on a little bit. Would you have any advice for a beginning motorcycle enthusiast and, kind of advice for anybody from, whatever, 10 years old to, 80 years old? Like just some things that they might want to think about and how they might get into this world a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, one I would encourage anybody, especially listening to this podcast, definitely should get on a motorcycle at some point in their life. I think that, I mean, I'd love to see everybody try. It's probably not for everybody. I should probably also say that too. Um, but you should always give an opportunity, throw your leg over a motorcycle with some, I think, proper level of concern for safety too, though. Because yeah, you, I've been fortunate to kind of go through the things that I have and still be in as great shape as I am. Um, but I think that I would always encourage people to ride. I mean, I think it's something that just cannot be compared to other experiences, which I'll save for the last ride. Um, but I think if somebody wants to get in it, probably the best way, and even if you have a best friend that knows how to ride and is offered to, show you how to ride, I think taking the safety course, the rider safety course,
Mhm.
because most of them, I mean, you can usually find them at local community colleges like GTCC here has them. They're also at a lot of the Harleys. I've had Harleys and I don't have, oh no, I do have one. Never mind. I can't say that right now. I do still have a Harley. Crap. Oh, I forgot about that bike too. But anyways, um, most Harley dealerships and community colleges offer rider safety courses on the weekends. They're typically one day where it's like half classroom, and then the other half is like a training course. But very patient people. They go over everything in great amount of detail that I think a first-time rider needs. Um, and if you don't want to go that route, then just start on a dirt bike, get in somebody's field. That's also a safe bet or safer bet. Um, but those would be my two sort of suggestions and like first time riders. I think you should try it. Um, and with some level of safety and precaution. Always wear a helmet, put on gloves, don't don't wear shorts, wear proper boots, shoes, closed-toe shoes. I mean, I'm kind of adamant about that as well. Even as a somebody that rides like the hooligan, I'm still going to be in some level of gear and maybe not all the gear I should be in, but I'm going to have a helmet, I'm going to have gloves, pants and boots on always. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. And dude, that's great. I mean, that's such good advice. And is there a type of bike? Again, imagine really a beginner, right? I mean, in the beginner in the sense that um, they're just not steeped in the knowledge that you are. Because I know myself, when I do see a bike the first thing I'm attracted to is the visuals.
Yeah.
But that bike might be too big. It might not. It might be too small. It might not handle, the way it needs to be for a beginner. Is there a type of bike that you would say like, hey, you know what? For the first 6 months that you're riding, get on, this type of bike. Is there something that you could point someone in that direction?
Um, I mean, I would say that any really, if you think about like, I might, if somebody were asking me as a friend, I might be like, oh, we'll go with something reliable. That's easy. Like you're talking about your Japanese bikes, Honda, Kawasaki, those kind of things. So probably to me, I don't think as visually or aesthetically appealing as pieces of machines or machines. Obviously the Italians do it right when you look for the looks, like Ducati. Germans well engineered. But my thing is like the bike you feel comfortable on is probably the best bike. Um, and you might not know what that is when you're first looking. So maybe, talk to some people, throw your leg over one, even if you're not riding it. Like what feels comfortable to you? Because, you're probably going to do the best on the thing you feel most comfortable with or on. And that's
Mm,
not the same for everybody. Like, I have a pretty big inseam or a pretty tall inseam, so I could throw my leg over pretty much any bike and be okay. But I don't know, maybe you're a little shorter than I am, or maybe you have a low inseam. So finding a shorter bike will work. So maybe that is something like a Honda, I don't even know what they are now, Bolts or Rebels or whatever. I think that, yeah, finding the bike for you that or the comfort one you feel comfortable on, that's probably that would be my recommendation for a first timer. Is like, what do you feel comfortable on? Typically, it is a smaller CC bike than most people think. You might be like, oh, I'm 40-year-old guy and I got to get a 1,000 cc bike or bigger. Well, I mean, I have friends that ride on 450s, or I'll ride a 450 with a group of people on 1200s, and they don't leave me until we are hitting, above a speed limit. So we're going 90 miles an hour. So any bike is capable. I'll say that too. Yeah.
last kind of question in this little line of thought: is there a reason to stick with a more modern bike because it'll stop quicker, accelerate faster, have better balance, or is it actually the opposite? Like, no, no, start on a vintage bike. No, I don't mean like a 1940s bike, but something more vintage because maybe you feel the road in a way that you can't on a newer bike. Like, do you have a feeling one way or the other? What would be preferred?
No, I mean, I would say probably something modern. I mean, the modern geometry suspension has gone a long way and made people safer riders, I think, on first start. So like having ABS, having good suspension, that's probably a better first timer bike than the vintage. Vintage are great because they're slower, perhaps. But that comes with a big cost of like, the ability to maintain, if something's more likely to break on a vintage bike, and being able to control the bike when there's some sort of breakage or, linkage falls out or whatever the case may be. I think that runs a higher risk in that sense. So
Hmm.
I think, probably a more modern bike with the modern accoutrements, if you will, having ABS, good suspension, being able to stop well. But also, again, probably not a bike that's overpowered for your kind of ability. That
Hmm.
that might be sort of a more practical sense. I think a lot of people will buy bikes thinking they'll grow into it. Well, you can just get a new bike, or you have multiples like me, or you can, trade that one in and get a bigger bike. I think I wouldn't, kind of you will have just as much fun, when first riding on that, 250 cc bike as you will that, 1250 cc, and maybe more fun because you can kind of, yeah, you can ride the bike, not the bike ride you kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. That's really helpful. All right. Let's wrap this up. So again, you're talking to someone who, I mean, I've been on a bike, but minimally. Um, I have never and never confidently. So meaning I've never ridden the way you have ridden, and I'm sure a lot of people who are listening have not had that opportunity. But after hearing you talk about this, it's it's really we want to see things and feel things through your eyes, your perspective, so start me pre-ride. You're gonna pick a bike, you're gonna get on a bike, give me the feelings of anticipation, and then, whatever happens during a ride that you think, we should know about, the beauty, the magic, whatever those things are. And then, like I said, take us right through to, turning that thing off and the feeling of, I don't know what the feeling is, achievement, exhaustion, relief, elation, whatever it is. Like, just take us from beginning to end to kind of put a little bow on this conversation.
Oh man, that's a really hard experience to share. But I do think it's like no other, which I have already mentioned. But when I go to ride, I kind of I mentioned all the bikes have different personalities and bring different personalities on me. I might have a goal in a certain ride, but typically I'm riding to ride. Like it's a day that I want to unplug from something. I want to take a little mind break. I want to, be by myself or explore or just, be a part of something else. I want to disconnect for a bit, perhaps. I think that's when I'm craving a ride. That's usually the way I start. So at that point, it doesn't matter what bike I get on, because any of them that I get on, I can be in that mindset pretty quick. Sure, there's a little bit of the prep, getting ready for the day, knowing what the weather's going to be, how to gear up. You take sometimes throwing darts on that one, but yeah, there's always that. But once you get on a bike, kind of getting it started, warming it up, checking the tire pressure, there's all those types of things that come part of it. And again, you're slowly pulling out of whatever world you were in the moment before.
Does that feel ritualistic?
Um, yeah, sure. There's definitely a ritual to it. Kind of going through that prep. But I don't think I'm not maybe as consciously aware of the ritual part, the pre-ritual, if you will, of it. But I think that's all prepping myself for it. Like I'm getting there as I'm doing those things. Um, and it's, sometimes I plan the ride. I might plan it. I'm a fairly spontaneous person, I should add too, though, which maybe drives my partner up the wall at times. But I don't have to have a solid plan. I can just decide that's what I needed to do today and just throw my leg over the bike and go, and sort of decide where it leads me afterwards. But I think every time that I do, it really is like that moment of disconnecting from whatever's going on and being present then and there. Um, I have roads that I love to travel, but I love to just find different roads to travel and like, oh, I don't know what that road is. Let me, sneak down that one for a minute and realize it's a dead end and I turn around and go back the other way. And I'm okay with that. Like that's part of the ride for me. Um, Now, if I'm riding with other people, that's a different ride. I feel a little bit more like I gotta have those planned out. But it's still, even when I'm riding with people, I often will talk them into like, "Hey, did you see that road back there? Let's go check it out." That kind of thing. So there is always the adventure, or sense of adventure, or even possibility, even if I don't take the adventure because I'm, trying to get an errand done. But still, there's the possibility of adventure for all of them. But I would say every ride kind of, again, you're in your head in a way that I'm not in the studio because it's just me. I'm focusing on what I'm doing. The things around me, they don't really become people anymore. The other cars aren't really people. They're just obstacles to watch out for, get around, navigate. Um, so there is that kind of mentality, but I think probably the most special part of it is like when I'm on the kind of more country roads and or on those like fire trails and dirt roads, and it is just me riding, um, being aware of like the surroundings, the bird flying beside me, which you would never see in a car, or the hawks in the trees or in the field or whatever. Like I feel like I have so many other things that I see in the world that I don't experience in a car.
Hmm.
And there's other things, and they're coming at a level that is still, I think, very stimulating versus like maybe, to compare it to like maybe a hike in nature. So there still is this like really, I think, exhilaration or kind of like, yeah. I mean, it's just such a faster pace as well. But not in a technology kind of fast-paced tech world, if you will. I mean, I think that, but it's just like constantly reassessing the environment, reassessing, possible like, is that thing going to jump out in front of me, or how big is that curve coming up? Do I need to slow down? Can I speed up? What's my lean angle? So there's all those things happening simultaneously. There's so much sort of happening. Um, but then, to contrast it is still the stillness of it in your own head, where I don't know what it is. Like, every ride I go on, there's always a moment where like I'm like, oh shit, this is the reason that I do the things in life is so that I can have these moments. Like it's
Mm.
the reason I work that job. This is the reason that I pay those bills or rent the studio space to hold all 20 bikes, whatever it is. I don't want to count. But it really there's like a moment in the ride that reminds me of the reason I do all the other things. And it's more than the ride. It's just like it's kind of like a moment of life realization, really. I mean, maybe I'm sounding really kind of
No, dude, this is
really sounds
great. Keep going.
spiritual
Oh
there,
my God, this sounds,
yeah.
no, please keep going. This sounds amazing.
But because I'm not like I wouldn't say I'm a super spiritual person, but there's something about like I often ask why we do things in life, and sometimes I find that in the ride, which sounds really, yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of it's special.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it kind of makes me realize like, oh, this is it. This is why. This is a moment that I don't want to be without. And this is why my life is mine. And what makes my life different from others too. And yeah, and they're just things that I couldn't predict, and I don't know how to describe me. It's a moment of euphoria, excitement, connected to a world, yeah, that I don't think I get from a lot of other things. Yeah.
Hmm. What, before you describe the ending of the ride and the dismount, is there, do you think there's a connection between the state of heightened awareness that you're describing and then the subsequent uh, state of heightened clarity, potentially?
Yeah, no, I definitely think, I mean, you get clarity in sort of having to be completely focused in I think the travel and the mode of in the kind of journey. Um, but I think the other things, when if you're comparing them, now if I'm kind of bringing this into maybe more of the group setting too, is like, then sharing that with somebody afterwards and talking about it, whether it was the challenges along the ride or the moments or the things you saw. It's like, oh, did you see this or did you see that? Or, oh, how'd you get up that hill or how'd you get through that creek? And those types of moments too happen that I think become part of the experience. And I'll say that, in that sense too, every ride becomes different, which, I think is another idea, the sort of this the specialness or the quality of it. Yeah.
Hmm. So you described that ride, in a really beautiful way. Especially to me, again, the thing I keyed in on was, you're riding, and like you said, you're looking for dangers, but obstacles maybe is a better way to say it.
Hmm.
Then you're talking about, the birds, in the trees and flying with you, and that awareness, and then the clarity that maybe comes out of that, when, all of a sudden life kind of makes a little more sense, or, that's amazing. So you pull into wherever you're going to pull into, the ride is over. Is there, you turn the bike off. Is there something that happens in that moment that kind of takes you out of where you were, or is it a continuation? And I'm really thinking of that moment where you get off the bike, whatever, you turn the bike off and the whole world just changes acoustically, right?
Yeah.
Um, what's that moment like?
Well, I think that's the moment too where you kind of come back in. I mean, I wouldn't say you just back into the world as you were, but I think that's where Um, you reflect back on the ride and think about sort of, that as the experience. But then I think it also brings me back to the bike then too, and my connection to the bike. And then I'm starting to think about like, oh, the bike did really well on that ride, or this was feeling a little weird on the bike. And then I start sort of picking apart that part of the ride, thinking about me and the bike and it's like, was everything running the way it was supposed to be running? Was I getting a wobble when I was, going around certain things and doing certain things? Is something I need to change about the bike, look at the bike. Then I started to think about like, oh, you know, what kind of maintenance do I need to do to the bike? So it becomes a little bit, you flip back into the other mode of it, which again, you asked me to sort of pick which one I found more, most monumental or special about the experience. But they all feed into each other. So I go back into the other world, which still is, I think, part of a therapy in its own as well, like the working, like the zen of the working, it's that kind of that moment as well. But it goes back into that kind of mode, if you will. Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome. This has been so fun hearing about your collection, but I knew the fun part would not be just hearing the list of bikes that you had. You know,
Right.
the fun part was kind of everything else around that. So, man, this has been awesome. I have appreciated this conversation and I've loved it. Yeah.
No, this has been great. I mean, I think you've put out things that I wouldn't have really connected, and I thought the beginning was felt a little strange for me to have or to talk about. But even then, seeing some of the connections, I think with the collection and with my world of motorcycles, and then maybe also just making me realize I forgot so many bikes to list. But collection or addiction, I don't know.
Right. Collection or addiction. Well, that's okay. That's the beauty of this. You don't have to make a distinction. But well, thanks, Derek. Really, this has been awesome. I've absolutely loved this. I know you're gonna head off to your mom's house and have a nice Easter dinner.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, dude, I again, fantastic. Loved
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, this has been great. And yeah, I got to go collect that money, find those Easter eggs, and see if I can win big this year. All
Cool. All right, man. Well, have a great rest of your afternoon, and we will talk soon.
right. Thanks again.
Yep. Bye.